Hi guys, welcome back to A Page in the Chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige, it is great to have you here. Today we're doing my November wrap-up. Now this is absolutely insane to me because I feel like I literally, just last week filmed my October wrap-up. But then I also think back to the books that I read at the beginning of the month and it feels like I read them, no joke, last year. So time is a social construct and is feeling very, very weird to me right now. Do like and subscribe if you enjoy my wrap-ups. If you want to stick around and see some of my other videos, there is no shortage of bookish content here and I have a lot of great plans for some upcoming videos. So you should definitely subscribe and make sure that you don't miss out on those. So in the month of November I read 7 books, which coming off the 15 I read in October is obviously quite a big difference. However, I did knit loads, so I've been doing something. It's just not reading, I've been knitting. However, I think in general it was actually a very positive reading month, so we can go and get into the books that I read in November. So the first book that we're starting off with is In the Icebox. I got this as an ARC through NetGalley and I was actually really excited about it because based on hockey and figure skating, and I absolutely love ice hockey and I used to figure skate, so I felt like I had some background in this that would make it interesting. So this was very much the cutting edge style book. In this book our main character is coming off an ACL injury. That means she's kind of out of action in terms of skating, but she needs to get back on a skating team really quickly in order to make it to the Olympics. So in order to do that, she starts playing hockey in order to gain access to extra ice time and get stronger. Biggest issue here, why is she a female skating on a male hockey team? That's not how that works. And I get that the authors really tried to do something with this and they drew attention to it in the plot. A lot of the plot is about her trying to gain the respect of her teammates because she is female, but all of the plot holes in this story could have been solved if it was just LGBTQ+. Literally absolutely everything would have made sense if she was just skating on a women's hockey team and she fell in love with a woman. Why have to force yourself into these plot holes just to write straight characters? However, it was a really, really fun read. It was exactly the light-hearted, wintry skating book that I wanted to read. It's a skating romance. There was so many skating technical elements to it and it had the hockey feel that I wanted. It was exactly what I was looking for at the time. That doesn't excuse the fact that there were issues. Brody is our star hockey player who becomes the love interest and my boy has some issues. I understand having characters that have drama and trauma, but he started off as such a wonderful, lovable character. He was genuinely one of the best characters in the entire book, and then he just became clingy and controlling and had some major abandonment issues that were never addressed. He would do things and then our main character would be the one apologizing as if she did anything wrong in the first place. He was just being abusive. And so what I hated about the ending of this book is that he was controlling and abusive and had his own issues, but the authors never actually made it a part of the plot that he had these issues that he needed to work through. That just became a part of his character and it became a really, really toxic and unhealthy relationship. I kind of reached a point where I was throwing things across the room because I was annoyed at the fact that this had happened. And the next book that I read is also a NetGalley arc, which was Bookishness. This is a non-fiction about the commodification of books themselves and bookish artifacts and how books have come to be artifacts, etc, etc. It was a really, really interesting read and I really enjoyed it, and I actually really do recommend this one because I think when we are in this community, everything about books and everything to do with books is majorly commodified. It's a very consumerist place to exist in, and I just thought this was a really interesting analysis of bookishness. It had a very interesting discussion of consumption patterns surrounding books, particularly across classes, which I found interesting. The one thing I will say about this book is when reading the description and going in, I thought that this book would be much more based in social science. However, it wasn't. It was very much literature based in that it was quotes from fiction books about books and an interpretation of those, which I'm not sure is the most appropriate method to come to the conclusions that were reached. But it was interesting nonetheless and I recommend it, so go ahead and check that one out. Then I read The Poppy War. This was absolutely fantastic. When I heard all the hype around this book, I was convinced that it was just another booktube hype. It can't be that good. It really, really is. I love it. So the history in this book really shines through. You can 100% tell that it is based on real Chinese history. I don't have much of a background in Chinese history. We have covered the Opium Wars a tiny bit in my addiction module, but it's kind of been on the outskirts. I think this book is interesting and completely draws you in whether you have that background in the history or not. And this is such a world building book that you don't feel lost or confused or anything. I'm so interested to see where the rest of this trilogy goes, given that this was very much about world building and the rest of them probably aren't. So, to explain what this book is about, this is about our main character Rin, and she is an orphan and she's kind of living in a not great environment. So, like the bad bitch she is, she decides that she's just gonna get the highest mark on this like standardized public test and go to the most prestigious university because that's the only one that's free. What a fucking bad bitch. We live for it. She does it, she gets in, and then it's very much a school kind of setting. This is a world that is very much influenced by war. They had these huge wars called the Poppy Wars that is like completely threaded into their history and their teaching and how the whole world is constructed, and it kind of all comes to play in the second half of this book, and it's just so fantastic. I will say that one of the tiny criticisms I had of this book is that it does cover over 2 years in 300 pages, which is a lot to cover. However, given this is a world building book, that makes sense, and I also don't think it's a downfall of this book particularly. I think that's just a downfall of fantasy, is that so much has to be covered in the first book in such a small amount of time in order to give readers the background they need to continue with the book or the series. Check it out if you somehow haven't already. This needs to be on your next TBR. Coming off the Poppy War, I was then really in the mood for fantasy again, so we finally got round to Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I gave this a 5-star. It was, oh my god, honestly one of my favourite books I've read this month. Not the favourite, because we'll get to that, but it is up there. So this book is incredibly fast-paced. It follows Fitz, who is a bastard of Prince, who is like next in line for the throne, and this causes the downfall of the next in line for the throne. He decides that he's going to abdicate, and this naturally causes a lot of problems for Fitz growing up. And politics is a huge driver of this plot, and that's just heart eyes emoji. Like, oh, we love when politics is a main driver of a fantasy, and this kind of like medieval court setting really shines through. It's so fun to read, and again we kind of have like a school kind of setting. Fitz is learning how he can serve the king and the court in the best possible way. He is in line for the throne, and that causes threats. It's very rare that the first book in a series will be a 5-star for me, but this managed it. I really want to finish the series now. After The Assassin's Apprentice, as you can imagine, I wanted to keep things on a high note, and I managed it. This was a 5-star read, and this was my favourite book of the month, and I think my favourite book of the year thus far. This book may have single-handedly saved 2020 for me. It was just so unlike anything I've ever read before, and I'm not gonna do it an injustice by explaining why it was good. It was just too good for words, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. So The Midnight Library follows a woman who feels like she's made a lot of bad decisions or just the wrong decisions, and she has a lot of regrets. The Midnight Library is basically a place between life and death where you can go and live out alternative timelines to see how your life would have ended up if you had made a different decision in that exact moment. I really cannot put into words how good this book is, how much it means to me now. Favourite book of 2020. The saviour of 2020. So if you guys have seen my end of the year book tag, I predicted that The Starless Sea would be my favourite book of 2020. So after I read The Midnight Library and thought that that was the favourite, I was like, well, now we've got to read The Starless Sea and actually, you know, tell if it's the real favourite. I gave this book a 2-star. This is one of the worst books that I have read this year. And it's disappointing because all the reasons that people told me it was bad are the reasons that I didn't like it. Even though the lyrical writing style and how high fantasy it is and all of that sort of stuff, I knew going in, and people had told me going in, and I was like, no, I read The Night Circus and loved it, so I'll be able to handle this. I wasn't able to handle it. I feel like in The Night Circus there was still very much a set plot. The lyrical writing style just added to the magical mysteryness of The Night Circus. But in this book, I don't think I could tell you what this book is about. I don't think I could tell you anything more than the blurb already tells you, because Nothing really made sense to me. I will say there are these little excerpts of like miniature fairy tales, and those were absolutely fantastic. If this book had just been a collection of short stories written by Erin Morgenstern, it would have been exactly what 2020 needed. It would have been a 5-star read for sure, because those bits are so good. It's when we get to the main plot that things just don't make sense, and I feel like the lyrical writing style was hyped up to the detriment of there being a plot. Everything was just an excuse to add in a superfluous description. It wasn't needed. I'll be honest with you, I still don't understand the fucking point of all the bees. I don't understand why they were there, what they came in for, what relevance they had to anything, and I was so disappointed in this book, and I was even more frustrated with myself because the reasons I didn't like it were all the things that I was warned about that I thought would be fine. So this one's on me. Learn from my mistakes. Just because you like The Night Circus doesn't mean this one's fine. And so then to come to the last book of the month and the book that I most recently finished, we have Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a super short read. It's only 200 to 250 pages, I believe, so super short. Exactly what I needed coming off of The Starless Sea. I will say, if you follow me on Twitter then you will have already seen this, but after reading all the bee descriptions in A Starless Sea and wanting to blow my brains out, to then open this book and the first page immediately be descriptions of bees, I nearly threw it out the window. But alas, we kept going, and this was actually really good. So this follows our main character Piranesi, and he basically lives in this kind of classical house. And you can imagine these columns and these big marble statues that are described, and it's unclear where the house resides. However, the house is kind of portrayed as being sentient, or at least Piranesi believes the house is sentient. And Piranesi's only other communication is with a character called The Other. And it's kind of this mystery, and things start to unfold and things start to make sense. And it's just so unlike anything I've ever read before. I wouldn't say that this is particularly fast-paced or plot-driven. As you're reading it, you're kind of just like, okay, I'm reading about this guy, not really sure where this is going, I'm just reading about this guy, and then it all comes together at the end. Such a lovely way. And I just feel like this is the kind of book that's going to stick with me. If you're thinking of picking the book up and you're not sure, it's a super fast, short story that really comes together in a stunning way, so you definitely should try it. And thus we have all the books plus 2 ebooks that I read in the month of November. As I said, it was a slightly slower reading month than normal, but I had some pretty big fantasies in here, and as I said, I was knitting and doing uni work. Overall, I'm actually pretty proud of the amount that I read, and it was a solid reading month, a lot of 5 stars in here, and I'm excited for December when I think we're going to have just as many 5 stars. So my reading at the moment is really on the up. We're doing real well in terms of the amount of 5 stars, so it's all going really well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know some of your thoughts on these books, particularly The Starless Sea. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. It would be really great to hear your opinions and your thoughts, and maybe it will change my mind. We'll see. Thank you very much for watching. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. There's no shortage of bookish content, and you want to make sure that you are not missing out on the Christmassy content that is coming up. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next week for my next video. Bye guys.